All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside Nick and Jess, and we are going to be talking about Chelsea's unfortunate trip to Leeds, where Leeds United, Dirty Leeds, took it on the day 3-1, starting the 6th minute, the 43rd minute, and the 72nd minute. They just put three past the Blues. Ortosin and Pedro Neto in the 50th minute was able to at least claw a goal back to try to make it look a little bit more respectable. But it was nothing other than a bad bad loss for Chelsea in a time where really it felt like we were in the ascendancy. The draw down a man against Arsenal was a bit of a resilient type of performance from this team after a moment of madness from Moises Caicedo. The result against Barcelona and Burnley coming back after the break. Chelsea were flying high. And Nick, this does feel as if it's a little bit of a too close to the sun scenario and crashing into that damn ground. Gravity is not too kind to Enzo Maresca and this team.
A performance so bad my mustache fell right off. Like it just
gravity is really doing a number on Chelsea and Chelsea supporters.
Took a nosedive. Yeah, I mean, I think the overview for this is it's too much too soon, right? And we talked a lot in the last episode, Dan, about how this season goes really depends on where you set your expectations. I think I've set my expectations appropriately. I was not massively surprised about the drop-off today because we have not seen this team consistently put in performances like they should. And this just had trap game written all over it. And lo and behold, we fell into the trap. So, yeah, it just not fun. Not a fun one at all.
And just to get the heat check, so we let listeners know exactly what they should expect from us in this episode. It is a little bit more of a, I'm not gonna say super sad and somber, but like it is a disappointment vibe that's going to be going throughout the central part of this episode, and just what we could have potentially accomplished in a win here, and what we really lose from a momentum standpoint by not being able to take away the 3 points here.
Absolutely, I think. If you're thinking about positives, it's even more about what we can take away from the game and to not let it repeat itself. I think that's the only positive light you can put in this game is whether or not the players and Enzo Maresca learns a few things from it and moving forward. Then if that's the case, then I can deal with today's game. But it's not just the result for me, it's how badly we performed, and the circumstances around it make it really, really tough. And as you were saying in your introduction, the last time I was here, I was just like massively laughing and happy with that amazing Barcelona win. So it's just like the juxtaposition is just very, it's interesting, it's sad, but at the same time, it's very Chelsea in a way.
It is the Chelsea giveth and Chelsea damn well taketh away when it does feel like it. Nick, why don't you run us through? We did have a couple 3-word match reviews from the listeners to set the stage, and I know that the three of us also have some contributions as well.
Spanish show with Leeds, the team. Leeds as in winning, and leaderless as in Chelsea. That's basically how that went. Good alliteration from Old Spanish show there. Childish Gambino with Death Taxes December. Hemp ends with Embarrassed at Elland. And of course, Breaded Shrimp, my favorite username in the world, Lackadaisical in Leeds. Dan, what about you?
Depth in millimeters. I think if you're measuring the depth of Chelsea's bench, it is... Whew, I don't even know if you could say feet. I don't even know if you could say inches. Though, look, there were some jumps that this team tried to make that left a ton of space above their heads in terms of trying to clear a ball out of the box. There's not depth in the positions we need right now. Part of that's injury. Part of that's recruitment. Part of that's, just players not being available for other reasons. But it is not exactly what you would hope. Jess, what did you have for a 3-word match review?
As per, I went with my reaction during the match, and being a huge Friends fan, I went to quote Phoebe Buffay, and it's just, oh, my eyes, because that's how I felt during the game. I was just like, oh, my eyes, my eyes. It's like they don't want to see any of this. So, yeah, felt appropriate. I felt represented by that scene of Phoebe Buffay.
Is that the first Phoebe Buffet reference in the history of the London is Blue podcast?
It might be.
Wow.
It took us over 1,500 episodes, but we made it happen.
I mean, I learned how to speak English with friends. So, I mean, bit of culture,
there you go.
bit of
How
info.
about that?
Yeah.
I could say they really were friends then.
Yeah.
They showed you the way. Nick, what's your 3-word match review? So we can end my terrible puns in the moment.
You could say Chelsea weren't there for us today, Anywho, I went with the other shoe. Been waiting for this one to drop, and drop it did in just a tremendous stinker of a performance. So the other shoe.
All right. Well, look, we're not going to mince words about it. In their own words, Enzo Maresca offered the most damning assessments of what this result was. Just to the official club publication, Maresca went wrong. He just used one word and said everything. Very underline it, bold it, impact 72 font. And then Maresca with Sky after the game was just, we have to be honest, they were much better than us in all aspects. There's nothing we can take away from this game. So that's why we're going to keep it as a shorter episode in this one, because you don't need to hear us talk about it for an hour. When Enzo Maresca says there's nothing to take away from this one, just the real question I have is, like, we've had a couple of like wonky results this season, Nick. The Sunderland game that we could have won, but ended up giving away the goal in the very end. You had the Brighton match earlier in the season. You had the shock loss to Manchester United. The Bayern Munich one is maybe a little bit different. What are your thoughts on is this the worst result of the season? Like, just end to end?
Yes. By a fucking mile, yes. Leeds are 18th in the table.
We can measure those in kilometers if you'd like to be more thoughtful to our international rest of world audience.
I think they use miles in other places. Whatever, who cares? By a long distance, Dan, this was a terrible performance. It was low energy. It lacked any sort of gelling between the team that was selected. It lacked a lot of effort, and it lacked a lot of leadership. And, again, you don't have to take my words for it. I'm not the overly negative one when Maresca says there is nothing we can take from this game. There is nothing we can take from this game. It was genuinely embarrassing. 18th in the table Leeds, who have given up a shit ton of goals this season, who have started to play a little bit better, but I guess they're now 17th in the table, but they've given up 26 goals. They're on 14 points. It is a truly, truly embarrassing loss. It is reminiscent of Ipswich last year. And I don't know why our level drops to the level of our competition or raises to the level of our competition in such big swings, but it is the difference between Arsenal, City, and us.
Just kind of continuing on that line of conversation, in terms of it being a poor result. Some of that was maybe dictated by availability of players, right? Obviously, Moises Caicedo not available for this game, and the red card. Obviously, Cole Palmer just getting back into fitness, so you did see some rotation. But we can just kind of get into it. It pushes us into a situation where we have a back line of Trev Chalobah as a right back, Tosin as the right-sided center back, Benoit Badiashile as your left-sided center back, and then Marc Cucurella. Marc Cucurella, who obviously needs rest. Benoit Badiashile, who's been, hot and cold. We can kind of say, like, there were been some good moments this season, but maybe some moments that are not great. Tosin, who looks to be just kind of in a different phase of the game, as in not playing. And then Trev Chalobah just, deputizing in the right back role with Malagusto and Reece James, both getting kind of the rest that you would hope other players would be able to receive at some point too. Bad performance, very bad performance. How are we describing Tosin's day?
It was the worst performance I have ever seen from a Chelsea player since that Bakayoko against Watford outrageous performance. It's been, in my opinion, absolutely abysmal. I don't want to gang up on players, but it also reflects on the manager. And I know we have to rotate, and I think he is right to rotate. We've played like 3 days. We're going to play in 3 days again. But at the same time, there's the big question mark, of Josh. And not only that, but Tosin hasn't really been performing up recently. I can remember he playing well against Burnley, and that's it. Every single time that he played for us since then hasn't been great. Whereas Josh has been the complete opposite. So decisions like this, I think it is absolutely fair to question the manager and his decision making. As for Tosin, I think that nothing that he tried today worked. Things he didn't try didn't work. And the idea that he can be good in the air because he's tall, I mean, it's absurd. I mean, he's not good in the air. He loses his duels in the air every time, and it's sad to see because, I mean, obviously you follow the reaction online, and now it feels like the fans are just very much, he needs time on the bench. And it is because I always try to think about the human aspect as well, but it's very complicated. I think it's best right now if he does stay on the bench, both because of what he hasn't been able to play, because of how he hasn't been able to perform, and also for his confidence and not to get the fans even into more like aggressive manner when it comes to him. But it's interesting seeing that lineup from Maresca. I didn't agree with everything, but I could see a reason for a lot of the choices that he made.
Sure.
I couldn't see that reason with Tosin because of the recent past and the recent performances and having Josh and all of that. I still can't understand why he played today. I can't, in a football sense, understand why he got the nod, and I also don't understand why he played the full game. Sadly, that's just how it is.
Yeah, and Nick, I think this is kind of an interesting point when you start to look at just some of the, performances that he's been involved in this season. Again, Chelsea are not a perfect team in any which way, shape, or form. Like, we do have 4 losses in the Premier League, which, by my math, if you're trying to win the Premier League, is not the type of thing to be doing. Losing 4, 5, 6 matches this season is not going to be where you want. But in the starts that he's had, we've had effectively 2 clean sheets, the 2-0 win over Fulham and the 2-0 win over Burnley. But in kind of the other performances, I mean, he was involved, put the full 90 in the match against Bayern Munich, which that was kind of a whole team thing. I'm not necessarily going to say that he was the only person who had a bad game in that one. Was involved in the 2-2 draw at Brentford, was involved in the 5-1 win versus West Ham this season, was involved in the 5-1 win against Ajax, was involved in that crazy 4-3 victory over Wolves, and then the 2-2 draw against Karabag. Also played not as a starter, but did have 84 minutes with that sub in the Manchester United game, and then featured in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and 2 minutes in the Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, and Tottenham matches. So I think like a couple people pointed out, like, oh, if you start him, like we lose the game. Like, that actually doesn't like trend to be appropriate. But I think that, like, at least in recent memory, maybe some of his performances have just lacked the right quality to give the back line peace of mind, which I think has to be a challenge for Sanchez, who, in the last episode, we're talking about, like, Sanchez not maybe an issue, like, obviously great header in the kind of first goal, pretty kind of stunning second goal to, like, I don't know how much I'm putting on him today. I think it was definitely more of like if your defense is tired, like, it's got to make it more difficult for Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago Dimitri did the math for you, Dan. So in the 5 games in this like latest stretch in which he did not play, we conceded 1 goal. In the 3 games that he conceded, or the 3 games that he played, we conceded 8. I mean, it's not all him, obviously. Not I'm a firm believer that goals are a shared responsibility. Unless you're literally like kicking the ball into your own net, there's a lot of shit that can happen that can lead up to a goal. He is just so obviously the odd defender out, like in his play style, in his pace, and the fact that he can't jump more than 2 inches off the ground on set pieces. He doesn't share the same athleticism profile as the rest of our center backs, and certainly not as Josh. Josh is, the person that's vying for minutes with him. It shouldn't be a contest at this point. Not only should you get Josh a ton of minutes because he has shown his quality. He's not perfect, but no center back is perfect at 19. I mean, it's ridiculous, but he can make up for his mistakes physically. Tosin cannot do that. I mean, not in the way that we are playing. I think in another team, even for Leeds, he could probably be really good, but not in the way that we play. His passing's not good enough. Obviously an error from the pass results in the second goal. His body language and his nervousness, I think, permeates the back line and makes everything worse. And look, I know that he's respected as like a leader and quote unquote unk of the team. You can do that from the bench, man. Like, unless you start playing better, I don't want to see him in a shirt unless it is like, Barnsley away. I mean, genuinely, I think it's that bad. And you should be able to get a performance out of Benoit Badiashile, who also wasn't great today. You should be able to get a performance out of Trev. You should be able to get a performance out of Fofana and Josh. And I think that's kind of the four that you rotate with.
All right, let's take a quick ad break. When we get back, I do want to talk a little bit about just maybe Enzo Maresca's decisions, kind of where we go forward from here. I mean, I think we maybe can say a couple nice things about like Pedro Neto. I mean, he would be deserving of some quality, nice things to say about it. But we'll try to find at least a silver lining, but at least a speck of silver. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. All right, so I think the other question is kind of this challenge for Enzo Maresca, the number of matches, the players available, the challenges he's kind of facing right now. And you would feel like we're at a point where this Chelsea team can rotate in players like you mentioned. Where's Josh? You feel like we could lean upon players like Estevao to be able to feature for a full game and maybe even play with while on a card because plenty of players have played while they're on a card as well. But I guess, Nick, where are you thinking about this in terms of what you would like to see from Enzo Maresca heading into what is, our Alexis December to Remember month? Like, how can he make it a December to remember and not a December to, dustbin?
I mean, it's a really, really tricky thing. It would be my interpretation of what we have is that you have to rotate gently. I don't think it can be full rotations. I don't think it can be 6 or 7 at a time. I think he's going to have to be smart. He's going to have to give people rest, but he's going to have to be strategic about it. There's no other way around it. Like, I think if you're expecting the B squad to perform like they did last season in the Conference League, in this year in the Premier League or in the Champions League or whatever, you're just out of your mind. Like, there is not enough talent, and there's certainly just not enough minutes for those players to reach their peak. I think that's the other part of this. So I think you have to be a lot more gentle in the way that you rotate, and that is going to put strain on the players who are starters, who are bona fide, kind of first choice names. It's going to put a ton of strain on Trev. It's going to put a ton of strain on Enzo Fernandez. It's going to be a ton of strain on Moises Caicedo when he's back, and more than we'd probably like on Reece James, and probably more than we'd like on Pedro Neto. But those are the guys. I mean, those are the guys that are reliable game in, game out. And you just have to figure out a way to strategically give them rest 1 or 2 at a time, not 7. I don't know if I have any other magic formula, but we need them on the pitch, not just because of their quality, but because they're leaders. There was nothing there tonight. And Enzo Fernandez can't really, I don't think that's like a supernatural role for him as captain. So yeah, it's going to be awkward, I think, mostly. And then, he'll have to figure out, how far he can stretch the first names on the team sheet and without, going down the road that we know we've been down before, which is tons of injuries.
And, just as you kind of take a look at this as well, I mean, we have players like Andre Santos who's getting time with Moises Caicedo being out. And the stat from Opta Joe was that since he joined Chelsea in the 23-24 season, we've only won 25% of our Premier League games when Moises Caicedo hasn't been in the starting 11, 2 out of 8, compared to the 52% when he has been a starter for us, 43 out of 82. So the Moises Caicedo effect is documented and very real. So it does create, I think, a bit of a challenge when, Santos has to come in, and maybe also a bit of a challenge when you have players like Lavia and Asugo who are not necessarily 100% ready to be involved and contribute. And so I think on one hand I am sympathetic to Maresca, and that there are some things that he can't control. He can't control players making the decision to go get a red card, nor can he control the health and the fitness of some of his players from these like larger injuries. If he was playing them into failure, I would say I would be more critical. But we've seen how well he's protected Reece James this season. He very clearly is trying where he can to protect players. Not all of them, but where are you at within just terms of how you'd like to see him? We've got this Bournemouth match coming up this weekend. We'll have our midweek against Atalanta in the Champions League. How are you looking to see him rotate over these next two matches?
It's very interesting. I think if you're talking about the midfield, you can't really rotate right now without Caicedo. The rotation you can think about is maybe, obviously, you have Champions League and Caicedo can play in the Champions League, so you rotate there. But otherwise, you have Enzo and Andre, and you have to play them. So it is a tough situation when it comes to the midfield. But in other areas, like when you're talking about the winger positions, all I want to see is how Nick pointed out, smart rotation. So it's good to rotate your wingers, but you don't start Steven without a fullback, right? You don't. I mean, what's the point? So, the choices that you make affect everything else. It's one position that you change will affect the other players on the pitch. So if you're starting with Steven and you want him to dribble and you want to break down a low block, essentially, because you go into the game thinking they're going to go with, back three and all of that, then you need a natural fullback. And I know Reece James wasn't available, but you do have Josh as well as an option, and you could go Gusto for 45 minutes and then change. And so you have to take those things into account. And obviously, there's one thing that Ollie always says that I completely agree with, and I think it's very prudent, and it's something that you have to take into account whenever you're going to rotate within the team, which are partnerships. So football is about building those connections inside the football pitch. He always talks about how Enzo Fernandez and Garnacho kind of understand each other. So you have to be aware of that as well when you're trying to rotate. Right now we're going to a busy period, and I agree with both of you. I don't think we have that depth necessary to just rotate the majority of our team. But so you just make tiny adjustments, right? So you start a game with two different choices to the starting 11, and then as the game progresses, you change other two. You just don't go into a game of football with 6 or 7 different players from the get-go. I don't think that's the way to go with the limitations, I would say, within the squad in terms of quality, or at least in terms of experience. I will say, however, that potentially having Cole Palmer back, even for few minutes at a time, can be huge. I think he can help the way that we're performing. I think he can help players like João Pedro regain their form and their confidence. And so those are small wins that we can, take into account with that. But otherwise, preserving players like Wesley Fofana, Reece James, I think from that aspect, Enzo Maresca has been great. He has been very conscious of players' welfare and making sure that the players are really fit before throwing them into the starting 11 or into the game. But otherwise, just be smart, be prudent, understand the limitations within your squad, and don't ask for players that are not there yet to perform to the level that our starters have been performing. I think that's really unfair, and it's not the reality. It's not going to happen.
I would also add to this, Dan, it came out today. There's a FIF Pro study on Moises Caicedo about his international travel, his international game time, his club time, and how exhausted he is from all of it. And, he doesn't seem to be getting, a break at all with Ecuador, even in matches where, there's nothing to really play for. I mean, it's a lot. And, I think he had 134,000 miles or kilometers traveled last year. I mean, I don't know how you do it. So, obviously our additional midfield injuries have not helped this situation at all. To be able to spell him even for like 30 minutes at a time, I think would be a lot of help. But it really does, I think, call into question what you said at the beginning, which is like, how deep is this group? And more importantly, if you're a person that hasn't had a ton of consistent game time over the last couple of matches, why are you not busting a gut in a game like this to try and make your mark on it? That part I've never understood. I'm obviously not an athlete like that, so I don't get it. And I know it was cold out, whatever. Lots of excuses. Maresca didn't make any. He just said we were shit, and I agree. But why are you not trying to break into that first 11 when you get your game time? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
I think I do want to add, before we kind of start to, wind down on some thoughts heading into the weekend, I do want to say a nice thing about Pedro Neto, because with the goal that he scored today, he has now equaled the most goals he has had in a single league season as a top flight footballer, which, we realize we've had Pedro Neto in our lives since 2019, 2020, when he joined Wolves from Lazio. So he's been with us and in our lives for quite some time, and he's been with Chelsea now 2 seasons, and now at 5 goals, he matches that 2020-2021 season, where across 31 matches played and 2,500 minutes, he had 5 goals and 6 assists, so 11 total goal contributions. He's on 7 now, with, again, just over basically 1,100 minutes played, 14 matches played. That's a really strong return for him. He's playing some of his best football. Again, there's been the occasional, I would say, stinker result. Tottenham, maybe, for example, is one of the games that you would point to and be like, not great. But if we look at those last couple of games, obviously, he's getting good numbers of shots. He had 3 shots against Arsenal, 3 shots against Burnley, only 1 against Wolves, but 3 against Tottenham in that game too. So he is getting some volume. He is getting the goal return or the assist return. And I do think, if you're just looking at what is a positive point, I think we point to Sanchez in the match against Arsenal. I think we point to Pedro Neto over the last couple of games. There are things that Enzo Maresca just can kind of continue to build upon, strength on strength, to try to make it through December, really relying upon some of those individuals who are leading just through performance, maybe not through the way that they speak and scream on the pitch. I think those are 2 individuals in my mind who are trying to find a way to will this team forward.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Pedro Neto. I think he is a leader, even when you're talking about the Brazilian contingency, because Estevão is always in interviews talking about him and how he helps him and how he's always with him alongside players like Reece James and Enzo Fernandez. So he is also not one of the youngest when you're talking about, players like Gittins or Estevão. So I do agree with you in pointing out Pedro Neto. I think sometimes people underrate him a lot. People just see him as this aimless runner, and I don't agree. I think the numbers show that. But with Maresca, it's simply understanding the strength and the qualities, the attributes that you can explore within the players that you do have. You're not going to have, obviously, the same things when you compare players like Estevão, Garnacho, and Pedro Neto. So you have to understand where are their limitations, how you can combine them with the other players available to get the best results. So I know I've always mentioned before that I want to see more of Garnacho and Estevão, because I think they go, their qualities, their attributes work well together because they're so different. So it's about finding those things and not having the same things over and over, and understanding, as again Ollie says, those partnerships and what works and what doesn't work. So you have a player crashing the box, then you want someone who does a lot of good crossing, and those sort of things will also help in terms of having the rotation. But I do appreciate that you talked about Pedro Neto, because that is a good positive to have, because I know we were having a little bit of a conversation before we started recording, and the only positive that I had was Reece James got rest. So that's good. So thank you for that. And maybe we take it moving forward. Yeah, we will take that moving forward, and hopefully he will score more and more and get those assists and goals up. So we'll have, but with better results, but with Chelsea winning, hopefully.
Nick, any final thoughts? Any type of things heading into this weekend? Obviously, a big match against Bournemouth, and then leading into the Atalanta match.
Yeah, if you're Joao Pedro or Liam Delap, please step forward to the front of class. Fellas.
Well, the real Liam Delap, please stand up. Please stand up.
Fellas, not good enough. Not nearly good enough. 2 attacking, 3 couldn't have been less impactful. Joao Pedro looks like a shell of himself, and he's supposed to be the guy. I treat Liam Delap a little bit differently than Joao Pedro because I think Joao Pedro's played in the league longer, is clearly a more talented player, has, I think a lot more in his bag than Liam does at this stage. But yikes, dude, whatever happened on international break in September has really, really limited him from what we saw in the summer. And I'm sure that it's not easy playing with a different contingent of players up front most of your games, but he couldn't even receive the ball half the time in this game today. And Liam Delap was making aimless run after aimless run. I appreciate that those runs were being made, but when you think about the context of, the runs that Nico Jackson made last year, they were a lot more impactful and dynamic than what we're seeing right now up top. So those two got to figure out something. Or Mark Guy is going to be playing a lot more football in the coming weeks and might deserve to at this point.
Look, that could be a way that Enzo Maresca tries to find some type of rest or some rotation for our striking contingent to get them firing again after a little bit of time off the pitch. But look, not exactly the result Chelsea wanted by losing this one. We set on 24 points in 4th position. Aston Villa, after a string of 4 wins in a row, now sit in 3rd place on 27 points. Every team except Manchester United and West Ham have played 14 matches at this point. I mean, so effectively, if Man United won, they would be level on points with us, which again shows you just how tight the table is at this point. I mean, it effectively is 10 points between second place going all the way down to 17th, 15th, because it's effectively 18 points or 28 would take you down to 19, so 15th place. Tight table.
Well, it's not really tight at the top, and I think this is probably the last point. Stop talking about the title. Title's not happening. It's over. Let's just keep moving. Top 4 is going to be a struggle enough with the way that we're so inconsistent, but I think we probably have enough to get back into the Champions League spots for next year. I think if you were a person who's like, man, if we beat Arsenal, and then they fall, they're not falling off. They did exactly what they were supposed to do today. We didn't. That is the difference, and we're looking up 9 points down now. So
difference between 1 loss and four losses or 3 losses is pretty stark, as it were. But again, an opportunity this weekend to rebound, to beat back Bournemouth, to get ready for a midweek that involves a Champions League fixture, and hopefully an opportunity for Chelsea to take 3 points and make it a little more comfortable so they don't have to play those extra Champions League matches, because boy, oh boy, the schedule would absolutely benefit from that. But that's going to do it for this episode. So don't forget, you can like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified on YouTube. Leave comments, let us know how you're feeling just about Chelsea as a whole at the moment and what you think is going to happen this weekend. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, The London's Blue Dispatch, written by our good friend Sam, CFC Central. You can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always appreciated. It helps people find the show and lets them know it's worth listening to. You can also get involved in our Discord community in a free or paid capacity. But that's going to do it for this one. So thank you so much for listening. Until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.